My name is Greg Peterson, and as chair of the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Committee, I would like to call a special meeting to celebrate the life of the Honorable Samuel C. Alessi, Jr. I'd like to recognize the passing of Paul William Keating on February 18th, 2020. After 96 years of wonderful years, Paul William Keating died peacefully at his home in Dunedin, Florida. Paul was born on March 20th, 1923 in Buffalo, New York. He attended Canisius College as well as the Gregg Shorthand School in Chicago, Illinois, where he perfected the art of shorthand. He served our nation dutifully in the Army during World War II, where he worked in the Judge Advocate's office at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Following his service, he continued writing shorthand for the remainder of his life. Paul served Chautauqua County as a court reporter for 40 years and had the privilege of working with 5 distinguished judges and numerous high-profile court cases. The obituary goes on to say that Paul was an artful storyteller. He had a fascination for colorful characters, be they notorious or noblemen alike. With his impish grin and his bright blue eyes, he would regale all with his subtly embellished stories of life during the Great Depression and big band era, music, or past exploits. I have posted on YouTube excerpts from an event that we had here in 2012 of the stenographers, just grabbing some of Paul's highlights, and so you'll see, and it'll underscore some of his storytelling abilities. So I'd like to put that on the record on the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Committee, our acknowledgement of the passing of Paul Keating, which I think as we speak, there is a private memorial service at Bemis Point in his memory.
I only know one other court reporter who has a handwritten sketch from a trial where they appeared in the sketch. And in my days, there was a sketch artist in a courtroom that I was in one time, and I was included in one of the sketches, and I tried very, very hard to get a copy of it and was never successful in doing it. And I've always kind of been envious of those that have been able to be included in a sketch like that. So that's a beautiful sketch, and it looks like Paul, and so that's really kind of a real prize to have something like that.
So we probably should give it back to Paul when the day is over today?
No doubt.
Not going for auction?
I got another one.
Well, Tom, since you're continuing to talk, why don't you introduce Paul Keating? What did you know about him?
I didn't know anything about him until I got here. And then I sat in with him with some criminal trials, and he had some lawyers with false teeth that I couldn't hear or understand. All those who I'm talking about, the teeth were clicking. I said, "How do you get that?" He said, "Oh, I'm used to it." And I was godfather for his son. You were? But we worked together for a long time, and if I got in a big civil case or a malpractice case with a lot of medical in it and couldn't spell something, I would walk over from the Jurassic building over to his office. "Hey, Paul, how do you spell this?" And he had all the mice running around his office because he was into this herbs and spices and all that stuff before anybody else was. Be careful.
Unbelievable.
So I've known him a long time.
Unfortunately.
Paul, what drew you to becoming a court reporter?
We knew them. My uncle had a tavern over in Lexington, in Ashland, the upscale place, The Place. And one of them used to come in there, and because he was my uncle, I got special treatment. And that kind of looked pretty good to me then. I knew them generally that way. And from this one fellow, Harry Burke was well-known reporter at the time, and that aroused my curiosity. And in high school, I loved shorthand. And I happened to see in New York one day at a convention, the world champion, Martin Duperl from White Plains, and when he was 18 years old, he wrote 280 words a minute, but he was a freak. I wasn't, I hope. So, and I never, even though I took the stenotype, I felt that it was too commercial. And these fellows that were in New York, some of them, by that time the stenotype had come into vogue because there was too much money in big trials with that kind of thing. But I stayed with some of these guys that stayed with shorthand. And although I can write the machine, I'm not comfortable with it though. So.
Well, great segue, super segue. Your buddy Jerry provided to me to give to you now a book, Court Reporter's Notebook, June 11th, 1962. Do the math.
I was 9 months old. While I was 9 months old, I was suckling at the breast and stretching my pants whenever I felt like it. And you were sitting in court writing that down. And had been for how many years by that time?
That's it. So on the cover it says June 11th, 1962, and then Dunkirk, June 13th, Fancher, Children's Court, Palmer, June 15th, Jamestown, Phillips, Children's Court, June 18th, Mayville. And if it's found, please return to Paul Keating at the 506 Wellman Building, Jamestown, New York. I must tell you, Jerry found it about 20 years ago and is just trying to find the office building at 506 Wellman. But he asked me if you would be so kind as to see if you could actually read this to us, because I can't.
Oh boy.
Just pick a page and see if you can read something from that, Paul.
That's family court. It's
While he's looking through that book, I want you to know that in the state of New York, we have 2 retention periods. One for civil and family court matters. And the retention period for court reporters' notes is 5 years. The retention period for all criminal court notes in New York State is 50 years. Now, I'm in charge of all the notes in Chautauqua County now, Tom's, Paul's, and all the other court reporters in Chautauqua County that have been through our courthouse. And I have been destroying Paul's notes now at the rate of about 2 boxes a year for about the last 4 years. And every year, 2 more of Paul's boxes of notes come up as eligible for destruction, 50 years old and older, and I think that's pretty amazing. That's pretty tough. And if it ever needed to be done, and that's why we're letting Paul go through this little exercise, we as court reporters need to be able to take those notes that happened however long ago and still create a transcript with them if we can. And of course, that's the purpose for the retention periods. So we just wanted to see whether I should just go ahead and destroy the rest of the notes.
All right, Paul, did you get anything that you can decide?
Yeah, this is, I'm leery about this because of one reason. It's a show cause order in the matter of adoption of Michael Mitchell Linnecke, Jr., a minor over the age of 18 years by Jack Fair and Eleanor Mabel Fair, husband and wife, appearances, Ori Ottaway for the petitioner. Hey, Tony, where's Stan? Was there an Ori Ottaway around?
He's here.
Yeah.
Huh? Was there? Ori Ottaway?
Yeah, or he'd be Ottaway's son.
Oh, see, I didn't know it was, oh, yeah. Eleanor, did you ever?
No, I don't.
Eleanor Mabel Fair appears in person in court. The affidavit of service by so-and-so of Kelsey shows on Michael Mitchell Linnecke, June 5th, 1962, Erie, Pennsylvania. We have noticed that Samuel Price appears for Michael Mitchell Linnecke. He requests an adjournment continuously for an adjournment for 11 o'clock in Dunkirk on June 13th.
That's a request for an adjournment. Oh, nicely done.
That's, wait till the Hungarian psychiatrists come around. I'm going to get sick to my stomach.
Paul, you were involved in a variety of interesting cases, and One of them resulted in a letter which I'll read. April 23rd, 1996, dear Paul. I owe so many letters to friends and family that it is disgusting. So I am resorting to this cowardly, duplicated letter just to catch up. Nothing is in writing from either John T. Ward, Neil Robinson, or then Judge Lee Town Adams, but the nature of the parole board's approach to me makes it transparent that the Mayville Mafia is behind their refusal to release me. They used my killing of the vicious dog about 1976 as a pretense of proof I am unfit for release. Goes on to say, I tend to believe that anyone who has done the dirt that the Mayville Mafia, my term for the Ward Adams Robinson combo, have done to me would expect that I would come out of prison with thoughts of retaliation by homicide. That is not at all the case, but they seem to be making their judgments on the basis of the way a normal man or a normal baboon, such as themselves, would react to 15 years of unjust imprisonment. It is, after all, a terrible crime against me, and they knowingly did it as a gross perversion of justice. Signed, Kelvin K. of Oaknoe.
You heard of him?
Kelvin of Oaknoe.
Tell me about Kelvin of Oaknoe.
Do I have to? I used to get that kind of letter probably every couple months because I was on his preferred list. And there was another list and they were all on it. And I was going to keep myself isolated if I could, but I was trying to, the law requires you to send a transcript for the sentencing minutes, so I didn't want to get in the bag. It was the only reason when he first, I'm trying to figure out, I think I can start by, I have a real good friend who's a court reporter in Buffalo. And we were kids together, and the phone rang one night, and Calvin was in. He says, hey, your buddy's here. I said, what? He said, Calvin of Oaknoe. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he was driving down Main Street the other day, and gets in a fender bender in Genesee Street, someplace like that. Maybe that might have been a taxi cab, too. But anyway, they get him in the city court before a very fine gentleman, old Clifford Chipman, a 90-woman. He says, now, Mr. Oaknoe, I got to give you your rights here. He says, I know you do. He says, but I don't need them. And he said, well, just take it easy. No, you take it easy. I said, well, now be careful. No, you be careful. This is Calvin. So the first thing you know, there's a Bible there. Picks up the Bible, hits him on the head. Well, Calvin was 30 days late to come back to Mayville. That was the beginning of Calvin. So he was a volatile character. And I know when I asked about him. And I think one of the reasons I'm a little careful, if I'm quoting him from, I know somebody said it, but what court was it? Was it grand jury? Was it family court? And do I want to get in the bed with a guy like that? I was willing to take a chance and tell general stories about him too. But I don't think that there's not a court that I've been with him. He got down there with some dog down in Frewsburg, and he got a little trouble there. And the state trooper on the right-hand side lights up a cigarette. Well, if you lit a cigarette, he'd knock your head off. And that's his problem. On the opening of hunting season, the guy that ran the Friendly Grill over here, Jungle Kelly, he was a hunter too, and he came along, and the two of them would meet on that side road over there, and wow, Calvin won. And that was the start of playing in the big leagues for him. And it was a tough thing. And from that time on, it was nothing but trouble. You name it, he was in it. And I know one time, I often said God gives all of us a little bit of talent, and even Calvin. That's not quite the way it was. But I went down to my daughter's house and just the Catskills one day and knocked on the door, and my 9-year-old grandson came flying with a little sign, "Run, Bucky, run." So he wanted to know about Calvin. Because Calvin had become a culture over down there. And there were so many things about the guy that, it's just, he had this theory. John Goodell somehow met him and gave the thing to Judge Adams about his tenants. And it turned out to be that Adams looks him over, and one of them is 10 months is the real year, not 12. And he had a few ideas like that. You don't have children in the regular way that way. You do it Calvin's way. And he and his wife married, and incidentally, he wrote the marriage ceremony, and she signed it, so to make it legal. And you don't, what you do is, they decided Aldous Huxley should be the father of his kids. So they read a letter to Aldous Huxley over in his mansion over in England someplace, and he writes a letter back, and he says, "Dear Calvin, I'm very flattered by your letter," and he says, "I considered it, but," he says, "I'm 86 years of age, and I don't think I better continue with this." That was another winner for him. I'd like to go on with the guy, but it's just, I'll leave it like that, for temporarily until I can construct it better.
Okay.
Question,
What's that? Yeah.
did you take the trial where Calvin decided that he was a church, so he didn't have to pay any taxes, and that was a trial before Judge Adams?
No, but I'm aware of that. I don't know who took that thing, but he also, didn't he declare clergyman discounts? Because he was the god of Oakdale. It was his own planet. And Judge Adams thought he had a better system than we did. How do I get another job, you know, at this stage of the game? No, I know what you're talking about, though. That was I shouldn't say this because I can't prove it, but I understand he had the first computer job in Warren State Hospital in 1959. He was a genius, no question about that, but he couldn't tie his shoes. So he's standing opening the door, and this guy comes up, he's got a cigar, and Calvin says, "Put that cigar out." "Well, who the hell are you?" Well, by the time it was all over, they rolled down the stairs and out the front door, and Calvin never came back, and neither did the computer. That's the way it was. I don't know, it's just too wild to actually believe it, but those are the things you hear about the guy. So, famous Dr. Judith Lahote, the medical examiner from Buffalo and Budapest, Hungary. And the state sometimes sends these guys over to go on for competency hearings. If you haven't heard them with Hungarian accents, you're in for it. Or once in a while, you do get good though. I mean, you get used to it, but it takes you a little while to do it. And this day was the Hella trial, and she was a very important part of the trial, and she was answering in a flamboyant manner, "Each was authorizing." And I looked like this, and she said, "Eat was authorizing." Then I figured out what it meant. If one more, I think I would have got it. But that was the toughest I ever had that way. But,
What did it mean?
well, I know. It's like Dr. Suarez, the psychiatrist from Argentina. Something was six-egg. And I was thinking maybe I was writing six-pack. So I asked Bruce Carpenter, zigzag. No problem. You get it.
He was either as a prosecutor, defense counsel, you knew it was going to be...
Oh, I was afraid you meant personally, that I didn't like personally.
No.
I
I knew you liked everybody personally.
Yeah, I really did. I did.
Love John.
That's a given.
Oh, no, John Goodell was okay. I mean, he was hard to understand, but he tried to help you, though. I mean, he did one time. It was a murder trial. So I said, Mr. Cadwell, and this is before a jury, and Judge O'Connor was the presiding. I said, Mr. Cadwell, yes, Paul, what is it? I said, you turned your back to me, I can't hear you. He says, oh, Paul, I can't stand in one spot all day. So I looked around at Judge O'Connor. Fight your own fight. Oh,
It was the Marmar. We were having a beer after a murder case, I think, and he purchased a lottery ticket and won $100.
I wasn't there really, but I heard all about it.
I thought it was you.
He wasn't the same guy for a long time.
Did you buy a beer?
No,
Are you
no.
kidding?
The story was, I thought it was you. The story was he didn't want to pay the income tax on it, so he sold the ticket to you for $85.
No, he sold it. I think he sold it to Tony Caprino.
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe he sold it to Tony. He didn't want to pay the tax on it, so he sold it.
You're right, it really did happen. I heard it.
Judge Ward, you've got a question or two, I know. I can just see it.
I'd love to ask Paul which attorney was the best at pushing Judge Adams' buttons. Because we all know there were some who would do that purposely and knew how to do it. And I don't mean it
I think just about all of them.
at one time or
If he
another.
wanted to do it,
Might have been Ed Fagan.
oh my God, he gets first prize. Yeah, for many reasons. And a very capable lawyer too, he knew how to do it. I think so. Bruce Carpenter also was a close second.
He even annoyed Judge Ricotta, who was the easiest going guy in the world.
He even annoyed Paul Keating, was the only one he did.
Paul, by the way, how old are you, Paul?
I haven't figured it out yet.
Judy, how old is he? 89? Wow,
Oh,
that's
he's
amazing.
gonna kill.
It was 3 miles from Hartford, and they had a case that was unreal. It's going to be, well, how do I start? These two guys were professional house burglars, and they saw this guy's car, white Cadillac, in a supermarket, and he's an endocrinologist. His wife is supervisor of nurses. They've got 2 kids, 11 and 13, and they said, hey, this is a good shot. So they went down and followed the car and got to where their house was and saw 2 lights on, and they figured, well, that's a ruse, there's nobody there. Well, it so happens that the 2 girls were upstairs reading Harry Potter. They broke into the house. First of all, they thought they killed the doctor, but they didn't. They did kill the mother. They raped both girls for several hours, and then lit the house on fire while they were in there. The cops were outside, they thought that there was nobody in the house. There was a big argument about that. So they were both sentenced to the jail. The first guy, he was a Russian kid, that was one of these adoptee kids, and he had a personality problem. So the other guy was a professional house burglar, and they both got the death penalty. But since then, Connecticut is not a hotbed for death penalty, to say the least. They took the death penalty off. Now they said that afterwards, they will keep the death penalty on for those 2 only. And you can imagine the kind of legal battles that are going to be coming up in Connecticut. You and I will both die of old age by the time that thing gets settled.
A couple of things about the Reed case that you alluded to earlier. The case went to the Court of Appeals.
Yes,
Automatically, and it was a 5-2 decision affirming the conviction. So then my dad and Bud Wright went to see.
Oh my God, Bud, this is
Went to see
nice to see you again.
Governor Harriman. to see if Governor Harriman would, forget what it's called. Commute the sentence. And Governor Harriman denied that, and he was executed. And it was the last execution in Chautauqua County. And my dad went on a 2-month drunk after that.
The night that he was to be executed, Bud, Wright, and Bill were at their home, their parents were away. So Carol decided that they shouldn't be alone, Bud shouldn't be alone that night. So we invited him for dinner, and many martinis, and I thought he'd forgotten. It got close to midnight, he was going 59, 58, 57. It really was a very tremendous impact on Bud.
I would have no problem with that as far as being upset about that, and that kind of condition. You know, if they needed somebody to pull the switch, they would come for them. Yes, sir. In that case, yes.
Last word.
Greg, could I have just one more thing about Paul? When I was trying cases as a prosecutor, Paul was a great sounding board. Believe me, he had a great sense of how a trial was going. And during breaks, oftentimes, I would go up to Paul and he would give me some advice. He might say, "You better concentrate on juror number 7. I think you're losing. You're losing." Or, he always, but the best thing I love to hear Paul say is after I rested the case, we take a break, and I said, "Paul, how'd they do?" He said, "They better warm up the cars for Annika."
Yes, that's the sheriff's
Sheriff's car for Annika.
And they did.
Court reporters, a jury of 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Keating, Tom Muldowney, Chair Linnecke.